and the hire with TCU, and we're now joined by Stephen Johnson, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. We had Stephen on quite a bit, the great journey of the TCU football program, and I read the column he wrote about the interest in Kendal Briles by TCU. Stephen, thanks for your time with Paul, Craig, and David. What has been the reaction based on what you've seen, and is it 50-50, or is there a lot of, my God, why are we doing this?
I would say it's been overwhelmingly, my God, why are we doing this? The name was floated, I think, on Saturday. Briles' name was floated on Saturday, and the immediate reaction was one of, why are we doing this? I can't believe we're doing this. There's got to be somebody better. And so then, things kind of cooled down. We didn't hear anything else over the weekend. Then I talked to some people, and as I laid out in the column, they admitted, man, there was, I think, some belief or some hope that some of the blowback would die down with a couple of days, a couple more news cycles. But, I think after kind of mulling the offer over, all sources indicate Briles is coming to TCU. And I think the reaction is only going to get worse before it gets better, if it ever does.
How does the TCU, of course you haven't heard officially, but how does the TCU administration feel about this? I mean, I know that a lot of the blowback is out there and it's social media PR, but this is his fifth job. I mean, 4 other places have vetted him. How much do they have to be transparent in that process to quiet the fan base down?
Well, I think they absolutely should, because, like I said, they built up so much goodwill over the last year, obviously winning games, but just making the program more open, more accessible to the fans. You talk to different people, being able to come to practices, the games, and all those other stuff. Those small things have really built up a lot of goodwill. So I think the question, for them is they have to weigh, do we want to use some of that on this offensive coordinator hire? And I think what kind of, I guess, was the deciding factor was Sonny Dykes has known Kendal Briles for a long time. And I guess in terms of vetting, like he kind of did with Kyle Cesati, was with him at SMU, now he's on the staff with TCU as a strength and conditioning coach. I guess they're just trusting in Sonny. And Sonny's kind of his gut and his knowledge of his relationships with Briles and things like that. So they're aware of the pushback, but I think they're just kind of, they're trusting in Sonny on this one. So it's a move that's a risk, it's a gamble. And, hey, for their sake, I hope he puts up a lot of points.
Do you think this, and I know we have no way of knowing, Stephen, but do you think if they had won, 7 games this year, this is a move they still try to pull off? Or is it, like you said, that goodwill that was boosted by, ended up in the national championship game, trusting the process that got them there?
Oh, no. After they were went 7-5, 7-6, I couldn't see a way they could make this higher. Because then it's like, we had an okay football product, modest improvement. And now we exit the Gary Patterson era, have an okay season, then we kind of hire the son of our arch nemesis. So, no, I don't think it's a move you make if you're around 500. But, hey, when you win 13 games, you appear in the national championship. And, look, I don't think Kendal his offense have been as prolific as they were when he kind of got his start at Baylor, Houston, Florida Atlantic. But we can't act like he's a bad coach or anything like that. His offense has still been productive. He's a good OC. So, if his name wasn't Briles, I said in my column, he checked most of the boxes that would make this a good hire.
Well, one of the other things, if they would have been 7-6 or something like that, Garrett Riley would probably not be at Clemson. So that would probably have stopped that flow right then and there. So I read your column, and you mentioned the goodwill. You mentioned a lot of things. But you also said something that kind of caught my attention. Is this something that they even needed to do, that there were other options as well? Your thoughts about, do you know whether he was the first one that Dykes contacted and this was who they wanted to hire from the beginning?
I think that he was definitely one of the favorites. Because one of the things I think Sonny wants in his offensive coordinator is somebody that can coach quarterback. That's what Garrett Riley did. Kendal has been doing that since 2015. He's done it almost every stop. And like I said, he has deep Texas ties from the time at Baylor, Houston. He runs kind of a similar offense to the air raid, his own kind of variation. And in his variation, just like Garrett, there's a big premium on running the ball. Arkansas had one of the top rushing offenses in the country with K.J. Jefferson and those staples are running back. So I honestly think, and he's also a pretty young guy. I think he's 40, if I remember correctly. So I think he was kind of, if not 1A, he was probably 1B. You know what I mean, in terms of the guys that they could realistically get. So I think he was one of, and the fact that over the weekend we didn't hear any other names pop up, or really even this week, that lets me know that he was kind of the guy they really wanted from the jump. And, hey, they said we're going to endure this storm of criticism and blowback, and we think it's going to work out. So we're about to see.
Is any of the criticism coming from people who would even make them change their mind, or is it from just, everyday Joe fan?
That's a good question. In the last couple of days, I've heard some more prominent people, some more prominent alums like Joel Anderson, a former player, now a media personality on Twitter. I've had some former athletes, and I think maybe even some athletic donors reach out to me about how disappointed they were about the decision. Brenda Trace, I believe is her name, is a sexual assault kind of an advocate. I want to say a survivor as well, too. She's been very outspoken on social media as kind of their story has picked up traction. So there's been some pushback, but I'm guessing that enough of the big donors, enough of the families that are kind of really investing in the program right now, I'm guessing enough of them signed off on it, man. If the big money supports it, man, I think their opinion is not the only one that matters, but we all know that their opinion carries a little bit more weight than mine or even the casual fan.
Steven, just looking at what he walks into, Max Duggan made his decision. We know Quentin Johnston's off now. Losing both running backs in DeMarcado and also Kendry Miller. And there's others as well along the offensive line at the skill spots. They're turning over quite a bit. So what do you feel like Kendal Briles is walking into? And I know people will naturally also start speculating about, hey, is KJ Jefferson going to come, waltzing right behind him? How do you view the situation with KB for starters?
Well, I think for him it's going to be a little bit tricky because they have so much turnover. I think it's going to be extremely hard to replicate the same success that the offense had last year. They were at the top of their developmental cycle. A lot of those guys are seniors, fifth-year seniors and juniors and things of that nature. So they had a ton of upperclassmen in the 2B. So it's going to be a younger roster. They kind of reloaded a bit in the transfer portal. But I think when he kind of walks into that scenario, he's walking into a scenario where he's probably not going to be able to live up to what Garrett Riley did on offense last year, which is only going to kind of increase some of the pressure on him because then you're going to have fans saying, hey, our offense isn't as good as last year, which probably won't all be Kendall's fault. But I do think there's still plenty of talent. I love some of the young talent they got on the roster. Trent Battle at running back, Jordan Hudson at receiver, Cordell Russell's an early enrollee, a guy that kind of moved up to become a top 50 recruit on some outlet, the wide receiver. So they have some talent, man. If they can kind of just regroup on the trenches, I think they can still be very productive. And I know Kendall really likes running the ball, so I still expect them to have a balanced offense. They're still averaging 30-plus points a game.
Stephen, Paul asked something about the blowback, and could it be still another wave? And you kind of mentioned that as well. Do you feel like now that it's been released, although I don't know if it's officially released or not, but do you feel like it made it through the first wave, that there's no way that this could stop now that he's in?
I think he's in now. I don't think the blowback's done because the official announcement isn't out, but, whenever the school officially puts it out on their Twitter page, I'm not sure if that – I think normally they would probably want to do some type of press conference. That'll tell me a lot about how they're kind of viewing it, if they make him available to the media pretty quickly here after he's hired, or do they just kind of send out an email and just kind of try to get it done like that. But I can't foresee anything that will kind of, cause TCU to back out of the deal. Briles has been considering for the last few days, so he's all in. So I think Briles is coming here regardless of if the outcry kind of increases or decreases.
What would you ask him if you had a chance to?
I would ask him firstly, does he understand why so many TCU fans have this trepidation about him coming to their program, leading the offense? And then secondly, I would ask him, what has he learned? How has he grown from that? Obviously, he wasn't named in any of the lawsuits or any wrongdoing, I should say. But then in another lawsuit, of course, is a comment about asking the recruit, do you like white women? We have plenty of them at Baylor. That's something I think he needs to answer for. Like, how has he grown from that? Does he understand why that's problematic? And, TCU is almost 60% women. So what would be his message to them and how he plans to show that he's grown a lot from just being at Baylor in the middle of that campus?
Do the TCU coordinators talk very often? Because I know some places that's a weekly thing, and some places we hardly hear from them if it's not the off season.
They talked a lot to us this season, man.
Okay.
I would say maybe maybe I feel like we would get Riley and Joe Gillespie, the defensive coordinator. We would get if we got Riley one, we would get Gillespie the next week. If we wanted to get a position coach, we could get Anthony Jones or Paul Gonzalez or Malcolm Kelly, anybody we wanted. So at TCU under Sonny Dykes that first year, yeah, they were very visible, and that's why I think to me this move was a bit different than hiring Kaz Kazadi because Kaz is kind of behind the scenes.
Right.
You're around the program, and things like that. If you're doing like a feature story on nutrition, that's when you talk to Kaz. But Kendall's going to be the most visible person on Sonny Dykes' staff now, which is another reason why this decision was so fascinating.
Speaking of Kaz Kazadi, Carlton Buckles, among others, there are former Baylor staff members that have been a part of TCU. Sonny Dykes had him at SMU. Now he has him at TCU. Did you ever feel or get any blowback at all with any of them? I never sensed that at all. Is it just the last name of Kendal?
I think Kendall's last name has the overwhelming majority of kind of the blowback. I know when Kaz was initially hired, there was some pushback. That was before I got down here, but I remember some of my former colleagues kind of covering it, making the case for it. But even with Kaz, I think that was easier for people to stomach because he had been with Sonny for about 4 years at that time at SMU. So in that way, it was like Sonny was like, hey, this guy's been with me. I can vouch for how he's grown. I can vouch that he's not the same type of person he was in Baylor. But this one is a little bit different because he does have that Briles last name. And even though Sonny knows him, I think many probably don't know about their prior connection. So I think the last name has a lot to do with it. And I just think the comment about do you like white women, it's just so inflammatory, especially now in this current climate. And I think all those kind of factors weigh into why there's been so much pushback and so much negative reaction to this hire.
Stephen, I don't know if you could answer this or not, but do you feel like there was any kind of a Sonny Dykes by any means saying, this is who I want, I don't care about the blowback? And Sonny Dykes is a cool dude. We love to have him on the show. Fantastic, proud of what he's done. But do you feel like there was any kind of a, this is who I want, this is my foot hitting, like drawing a line, don't change this, and otherwise it could create some problems there?
Well, this is going to be speculation on my part. I don't know if Sonny put his foot down, but I think knowing him and how he approaches things, I could see a scenario where he went to Jeremiah Donati like, hey, I know the pushback is tough. I get it, but I know this guy. I know this guy since he was a kid, teenager. I can personally vouch for him. I believe in him. I trust in him. So I think he put his foot down in his own way. Maybe not in the sense of Sonny is a very thoughtful coach. He's very mindful of what's going on. Not in the sense like he's swayed by it. Like I said, that media savviness he showed in kind of getting more attention to the brand, that was him being thoughtful. So I think he will probably be, I think he considers a blowback, but I think this was just a situation where the program is putting a lot of faith in him, putting a lot of trust in it, and he's earned that in year one. So I guess this was, in a sense, kind of like you said, but I think Sonny's probably overall tactic was a little bit different.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it, and enjoyed your column when you wrote it 2 or 3 days ago. Thanks for your time. Stephen Johnson covers TCU for the Fort Worth Star Telegram here on 365 Sports.
Yeah, I mean, that's